Hi. So, I have had a few videos on YouTube by now. Uh, Mainly just the Undertale series at the moment. Um, but I have the Try Not to Laugh, as well as the Brand Steel Hunger Games video, which was a chaotic mess. But the other day, I was actually attending a bachelorette party in which I was the bride's butler in one of them. Um, and I was telling a story to the bride, and she thought it was really funny. So did my best friend, which my best friend, Kolten, is actually a major part of this story. And as I am recording this, and maybe the day it's published, today is his birthday. So I figured, with how much they both enjoyed it, I would share it to the world. This is the story of when I went to my girlfriend's horror trail in Halloween season. Let's go. Did I just disparage all of my friends? Welcome back to Sammy Wally. Okay, so a couple friends were supposed to go with us. Just my roommate and her boyfriend. Um, and then Kolten as well. We all were supposed to go on a group adventure to a horror trail that's close by. It wasn't too far out of the city I live in right now. But it was still quite a drive. My girlfriend had been working there for a few weeks, and every horror season she does horror trails, spooky trails, or the like. So she invited us out to a haunted float. Well, I was sitting there like, what the hell is a haunted float? Um, and I was just assuming being on a raft for an hour, floating downstream while the Loch Ness monster tried to hunt me down or something. But nevertheless, me and my best friend journeyed down there with her. The other two dropped out of the whole ordeal for one reason or another. And so it was just me, my best friend, and my girlfriend. Well, my girlfriend had to, do her job. So it was just me and my best friend for most of the night. And so we had to sit there from 5 o'clock until sundown. I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. And my girlfriend was like, you guys can go get some food or something. I'm like, sundown's not too long from now. It's October. No, sundown was a good 2 or so hours away. I completely underestimated when exactly it would be dark enough for them to do this. So after a while, we just kind of sat there, and we were the first ones to arrive in the parking lot, which is kind of like a makeshift field next to this big old campground that they were hosting it on. And this old man came up to us, and he was super friendly and all, but he started like telling us these really inappropriate jokes. And I don't mean like inappropriate, like innocent jokes or not even on theme with Halloween. I mean, they were like legitimately sex jokes about like college students, which, as great as the guy was, that made us a little uncomfortable. But people soon after started showing up. Colton and I went to a nearby gas station slash Dollar General that I took a piss in, which also some guy was in the bathroom for like 30 minutes, and I heard groans. But it was time for the horror attraction to actually start. So we get out of my car, and we're just waiting around, just watching to see what happens next at the gate. And I'm looking around and I'm looking at the people around us and I'm like, wow, it's a pretty big turnout. My girlfriend Kat was right. A lot of people show up for this place, which is a great sign. So I'm just like, oh, I'm getting excited. So I'm scanning the crowd, and then I notice that something is out of place here. There is just a man in the middle of this field turned parking lot, and he's just standing, staring right at me and Kolten. And this is when I realized that this guy is just this 6 foot tall, completely makeovered uh, Michael Myers. And he is staring at moi with a big old machete. At this point, I was like, okay, I know what I'm going to do for the rest of the night. I'm going to antagonize everybody I see. So I start antagonizing this Michael Myers. I just start yelling at him like, "Yo, what's up, Michael? How you doing? What's going on? What's poppin' in Halloween Town?" And the dude just and he just starts walking toward me and Kolten. And there's a bunch of people next to us, and they're like watching him, and they're like, "Oh my God, it's Michael Myers," and he comes real close, and then suddenly beelines for another group. That was just a fun little deal. So next, we get up to the line, and we pay, and they read us a disclosure thing, just the usual standard horror things where it's like, don't have a seizure. Oh, if you do have a heart attack, you can't sue us. Oh, if that guy stabs you in the face, you paid for it. The standards. So we get into a line where a bunch of clowns are waiting, and they are just like outside of this big old bus. Um, and the bus is like fully decked out in horror like things you can find at like Lowe's and Home Depot and Walmart. I looked at some of the decorations on there and I was like, "Oh, my mom has that for her front yard." So, I at this point I was like, "Well, the bus is a little silly, but you know, it's just the vessel that takes us to the horror." Um, but the makeup and the costumes for the clowns was great. They surrounded us and were taunting us. The clowns were primarily picking on these children in our group, um, and for no reason at all, I just started taunting them. Like I'm fully aware they get paid to taunt these children, right? They get paid to taunt us and to you know say all these goofy things. I'm not. I'm not being paid to do this. In fact, I am paying them actively so I can do it, which I think makes that a whole lot funnier. But there was like this big ol' clown who really liked to pick on everybody, and the kids were calling him Jonkler or the Jokester or something like that, and um, he became like the star of the show in our group. There was also these two female clowns. One was like just and she would just keep laughing over and over again and stalking us, and you know that gets a little unnerving, but it wasn't anything that was too crazy, and I was just like, okay, whatever. So eventually we board the bus ourselves, and there was this tarp in the back, this just totally inconspicuous tarp. don't really think anything of it unless you're me and Kolten, who assume there are people behind the tarp. So we sit directly right next to it. Um, and at this point, I'm just like making fun of everything with Kolten, not because it's like particularly bad, but because it's just fucking fun. So anyway, we're driving down this campground, and I can't see a thing outside these windows, and uh, it's like impossible to know where we're going. But I knew the campground area. I had been there many times growing up as a kid, so I kind of assumed where we were going. And me and Colton were just enjoying the ride, looking at all the decorations, making gaffs and goofs, being our usual shit faced selves. But that was when a man, a clown, emerged from the tarp, and me and Colton safely went called it, because of course it was pretty obvious. And then he went and antagonized the children almost immediately. So I'm thinking, okay, well, there are people behind there. I'm like, I'm going to find another person. And it takes so long that I kind of just assumed maybe there wasn't another person until I feel something brush my leg. And I look over, and Colton looks over, and there's just a clown just sitting next to me, eyes forward, just. And I'm just like, hi, how you doing? And he's just, and he just sprints off and makes a beeline for the rest of the group, which are, everyone is sitting in the front of the bus. We're in the back next to the tarp. Um, so that made them easy targets, I guess, because we weren't taking shit. So the bus eventually makes a stop, and we disembark. We get off the bus, and we find this lady with a just tables and tables of guns. Um, and we pick up the guns, and she basically tells us the simple rules, just how the guns work. They have a safety, blah blah blah, and she says, "Don't shoot the mermaid," which is quite cryptic, and we didn't know what that meant. We wouldn't know what that meant for easily another 15 minutes. So I I I didn't know what to think of that. I'm like, man, there's one creature in this entire river that I can't shoot, and it is a fucking mermaid. A mermaid in which I know nothing about except for its existence. So we go down the hill, and there's this guy, and he's got a bunch of rafts. Um, and Colton and I are the only ones in our group, so we're kind of sheepishly following the rest of the people we don't know. And we're kind of just doing our own thing, cracking jokes, talking about how cool the experience is, and talking about my girlfriend, of course. Um, and we approached the rafts eventually. And I'm like looking around, and I'm like, oh, people are going and going. I'm like, people are usually going in fours or fives. And I realized that no one wants to go on the rafts with a few people. We hadn't stepped up. They hadn't stepped up. And I realized that it's because their child, um, who was speaking to us before at the gun station, was the only person in their 3-person group who was not deaf. We get on the raft with 2 deaf parents and their son, who is their directionalist, and speaks through them. We can't understand them because they speak primarily in sign language, and unfortunately, Kolten and I don't know sign language. The kid became the navigator at the head of the raft, and Kolten and I followed behind as they placed themselves next to the oars and started rowing our boat. Well, this easily became a moment where we were in the middle of the river, circling around over and over and over again, and drifting back to, toward the other end of the river instead of forward where we were supposed to go. We were supposed to follow these lights, and they were getting dimmer by the second. Colton and I don't didn't know what to do about this because we're just like, okay, well, they are facing forward as they should be, rowing, so we can't even mouth what we need to say. Even if we could, it's so dark, they can't read our lips. So, we are shouting to the kid, hoping he can hear us, about what to do, and the kid is giving directions to his deaf parents on how to get down the stream. Well, eventually, and it was kind of cool to see this, they started coordinating with each other and started going in sync, um, rowing this boat down the stream and actually making it around. They figured out the lights is what they needed to go for. They figured out not to go into this specific area, which had a bunch of actors in it. And they got really good at rowing and shooting. Um, so it became just a FPS shooter in which we were in dead last place. And there's just like people in the waters dressed as like drowned zombies, like in Minecraft. And uh, there was this one specific guy who approached our boat, and they told us to not shoot them in the head. I shot him in the fucking face, and I went, "I'm so sorry," and the zombie guy went, "Bleh." So I, mortified, tried to stop shooting people in the face. Um, I don't think I succeeded at that. It was kind of hard to see and tell who I was shooting and where. I'm not even entirely sure I shot people in costume. I may have shot people. Soon, the floating portion is done. So we uh, get off the raft and thank our lucky stars that these deaf people didn't plunge us into an abyss of a river. So we approach the hill and we go up it. And this is where we find the mermaid, who is basically just looking after the guns, and we put them in this crate and stuff. Uh, Colton and I just started talking about what just happened and remarking how cool and also funny it was that we were with two deaf people who were rowing the boat. So I didn't notice, but Colton noticed this, and he told me long after the fact that uh, some lady came up next to us who I did not notice and grabbed the guns next to us. She quickly left the area and put um, these guns on like some tractor or something that left. And then another vehicle, a tractor of some sort, came up with a hayride. So we board the hayride, which has this woman in a dress who's just walking alongside us during the hayride. And the driver, who is wearing a purge mask on the back of his head to make it look like he is watching us at all times. During this portion, the big clown from before the bus ride rejoins the group and starts taunting everyone. To which he starts laying into the kids heavily this time. One of the kids was like, "Yeah, I bet you wish you had a real job instead of being a dollar store budget joker." And he says something along the lines of, "Bet your parents regret having you," which is just fucking crazy. So we go down through the forest, and I'm looking around at all the props and people, and guessing. At this point, it's a guessing game where I'm like, okay, that pumpkin guy, probably a person. And then I'm looking at another thing, I'm like, that skeleton guy, probably not. And I'm starting to identify which are props and which are people, which starts a long game that Kolten and I started playing here. Eventually, the hayride passes a giant forest of webs, which two women are sitting outside of in what looks to be wedding dresses, white wedding dresses. And you can see giant spiders crawling in the webs and on the ground floor. I'm looking at Colton and I'm like, if we stop here, I'm done. That's it. This would be 0 to 100 scarier by the minute. I'm like, I can handle everything we've done so far. So far, it hasn't been too scary. That, I'd be done. I'd be done. It'd be over. So we journey further into the forest, and thankfully, we do pass the webs. And I'm like, oh my god, thank God. And I'm like, I wouldn't be able to handle that. So we go further into the forest. We go through this pumpkin patch where we see the pumpkin guy, and I figure out he's a real person. He tries jump scaring us. Oh, scary. I didn't. I was like, okay, whatever. So we get to this end, and it's the river again. We are at a bank, a river bank, and there's this brush in the middle of this bank area, and the guy goes, "All right, it seems like we've run out of road. We have to go through the river." And we're like, "No, we're not driving a fucking tractor and trailer into the river. That's insane." And he's like, "No, no, no, we're going through the river. Yeah, let's go." And so we pass by this brush pile, and it looks like we're going straight into the river. But, of course, he turns right around. Well, around this time, a man in camouflage, just completely dressed as Bush, who I like to call George W. Bush, just runs out of the brush pile, screaming his head off at us, which jump scares me quite a bit, actually. I never got scared up until this point. Nothing really was like, oh, okay. Yeah. That did scare me. And I was like, oh my god, okay, well, good one, guys. And I realize we are going completely back. This is a U-turn. This isn't just us missing the river. It's going back from where we came. So we pass the pumpkin patch and wave hello to the pumpkin man. And we stop right outside the webs. And this is where things got worse. I hesitantly get off the trailer and I approach the women who are just standing around saying, "Hello, welcome, hi." Oh, and it's worth mentioning that when we started the hayride, we heard someone scream. Just the loudest scream we had ever heard. And this spider web in which we heard that scream was like a mile away, half a mile to a mile away from the location we were in when we heard that scream earlier. That's just important to note. A little bit of foreshadowing for you. So, Kolten and I are still not taking this seriously. Mostly me. I'm still not taking this seriously. I'm a big boy and I'm just here to heckle everybody. So I'm just like telling everyone, nice outfit. Oh, you're so scary. Ooh. And then I noticed this guy behind a tree. And he's a big boy. He's like easily 6'5". He towers over me. And he comes up to me and he has this nondescript mask. The only way I can kind of describe it is like the front man from Squid Game, but less distinguished. Like, doesn't have as many, what would you call that? Polyhedrons. Shapes. He comes up to me and he goes, looks at Kolten. Then he looks at me and he goes, which one of you is Sammy? And I freeze. It's like everything that just happened, this half hour, all of it just boiled down to this moment where I just, huh? And I go, yeah, that's me. And Colton takes a step back. He just, nope, I'm not affiliated. And he doesn't say a word. He's like, oh, God. I just stand and I'm like, what? Why do you know? I'm like, did Kat tell you about me? And he just is like, mm-hmm. And he walks over to the women and he's clearly whispering something to them. And I, at this point, am like, what the hell? What was that? How did this guy identify me? How would he know? There's no way he knows. The only way he knows is the hat. But that's quite the little thing to pick out of a crowd, especially when I'm pretty sure I saw one other guy there with that hat. So I think nothing of it, except for everything of it. And the woman divides our group of easily like 12 people into two groups of 6. And she says that there are 2 groups that are going into the webs. She is a liar, by the way, because she immediately follows up with, except we have 2 special guests with us tonight, and asks for me and Kolten to step forward to her. I'm not paying attention. I am just heckling the crap out of the tall dude because he's next to me now. And Kolten grabs me by the arm and he's like, hey, they are telling us to come forward. And I'm just like, what? Like, why are we coming forward? What did we do? And we step forward to the lady and I'm looking around. I'm like, what is this? What's going on? And she goes, you 2 go in. Go on in. Go ahead. And I'm just like, no. I'm like, no, the groups of 6. Remember? Groups of 6. And this is where I found out, oh, yeah, she is a liar. There's going to be 3 groups. We are the first group. Just me and Kolten. So this part that's designed for 6 people to go through is going to be witnessed, especially by me and him. At this point, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what I'm going to see. I don't know what to expect. At this point, we haven't walked through a horror trail yet. We've only floated through or gone on a bus. So this is where I got a little very much like a pussy. So we are walking, and I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, there's got to be something in these webs. I'm like, okay, we're just navigating the webs in the darkness. And I'm like, okay, don't like this. Don't like spiders. Big, not a spider fan. Unless we're talking about Spider Man. So we are walking, and I turn around, and I notice there is a woman following us. Not one of the two women, a new woman. She came out of somewhere, came right out of her hiding spot. And I'm looking her up and down, and I'm just like, this woman looks very familiar. And yes, she would look familiar because she is one of the actresses in which Katie, my girlfriend, did the makeup on. Um, and I'd seen photos of it. So I'm trying to remember. I'm like, I know this lady. I'm like, what was she? I'm like, I know that cat told me who she was. And I'm like, okay, it was some creature. I'm like, I gotta remember. And so we were walking through, and I'm turned around, and I'm like, so, Cat did your makeup? And she goes, and I'm just like, it looks good. And she goes, like, you gonna talk? And she goes, and I'm just like, okay. And Kolten and I get to the end of this web, and we're just walking through, and I'm just like, I'm getting a little worried about the woman behind me, but I'm like, okay, whatever. And it was at this moment where I remembered exactly what she was. She inhales. I just hear a sharp inhale behind me, and all those memories flood back. I hear the most ear piercing, loudest scream I have ever heard in my life in my ears, 3 feet from me. And it was at that point that I remembered that Katie did a makeup on a banshee. So Colton and I's ears hurt really badly. We approached this graveyard, and this man, this really big brute of a man, has this giant shovel, and he's just slamming it down into the ground, following us. And I'm just like, oh my god, okay, whatever. So I'm going through this graveyard. I'm like, Colton, there's someone behind us. Oh my god. And he's just like, all right, okay. And we're just going through this thing. And at this point, there are not a lot of places around us where someone could be visible. There's a lot of graves, there's a lot of tombs, there's a lot of props and stuff, and a lot of things that look like they could be people. So I'm picking out spots where people could hide, where costumes are, and of course, you know, people try to jump scare us. But I'm correctly identifying and warning Colton as we go along because I'm getting a little paranoid here. And I'm just like, okay, there. I'm like, all right, there. And all the while, everyone is like saying my name, like, Sammy, Sammy, we got you, Sammy. And like saying things about my girlfriend, like, cat's gonna enjoy this and stuff like that. And I'm just like, don't do it, please. I'm getting freaked out. So we approached this area, and uh, Kolten and I are just like, okay, nothing has happened in like 20 seconds, which is a long time running through this area. And I'm looking around, I'm like, what is the next thing? What is it? What is going to happen around us? What the hell? And I'm starting to get a little freaked out. My heckling days are soon over. And so we pass by this end of the area. And I see I see a gargoyle. And his skin looks like stone. His outfit looks like stone. His wings look like stone. And I stop and I stare. And for just a good 5 seconds, I'm staring at him. And I'm trying to rationalize how he could be real. But I'm just like, I'm not certain. I don't think this guy is real. It looks fake. This is a statue. This is a giant statue of a gargoyle. And within that half second that I saw him blink and him leap toward us, it was shock. It was shock where I was like, oh, he's real. So it was like, oh, and then he leapt, which triggered fear. So, my version of this interaction with the gargoyle went a little like this. Because I had no time to warn Kolten. It was, he's real, and then I'm being ambushed by a fucking stone man. Kolten's version of this interaction was, and let me preface this by saying, because y'all don't know Kolten, he is a very religious man, who does not take the Lord's name in vain. He did. He screamed, "Oh my God!" And just fully just fight or flight mode at this gargoyle. And I'm just like, and I'm cowering down. I'm like, oh, please, gargoyle, please don't kill us. Please. And we move on. We're just like watching this gargoyle, and we're just like, holy shit, he looks real. Like, that looked like a gargoyle. And so far, this is the scariest moment yet. So we move on, and we go to a clown's tent, which this part's not really scary. I've never been one to be scared of clowns. I know that this area is hell for others. To Kolten and I, it was just kind of funny. We approached the tent, the first tent, and I could clearly see clown shoes underneath the tarp, where we enter. And so I just looked in, or not looked in, but hollered in, and I was like, "Hey, I see you. I see your shoes. Like, I'm coming in. You're not gonna scare me." And bless the guy's soul, he tried. He tried to scare me, but we knew he was there, so there wasn't much he could do. So we start navigating these clown tents and their little maze, um, and it's not that scary. Just a bunch of guys in clown stuff, clown gear, and clown dolls and stuff. Except for a room completely dedicated to a gigantic, towering over us, Jack in the Box. This Jack in the Box was winding. The clown itself was already popped out of the thing, but it was winding. And as it wound, I got nervous. Because if the clown is already out of the fucking box, what's it going to do when it stops? So I wanted to rush out of there. Well, eventually it did. It did stop. We got just bum rushed by a clown. Which, that part, give him props. That was scary. That was very terrifying. And this is like the end. These clowns were also kind of taunting my name around. They go, Sammy, Sammy, Sammy. And I'm just like, I don't like that. But this is the end of this little section. And I'm thoroughly terrified so far. I'm just like, oh my god, these people know me. They know my name. They're going to kill me. That's just it. They're going to stab me, and I'm going to look like a Halloween decoration. They're going to get away with murder. So we get on this tractor again. It's the same tractor from earlier, just parked over in this new area. And we wait for the rest. The next area, which is the last area, no one is like yelling or saying my name anymore. I found out long after our horror trail that Kolten knew a bit of information that I did not. And he withheld it from me, to which I was playfully pissed about. It turns out that earlier, next to the mermaid, when we were having our conversation and I was just shooting the shit with him, the woman who grabbed the guns and left and saw us, he saw too. That was my girlfriend, Kat. And it turns out, Kat, who wasn't all too sure that I would actually go on this horror trail, didn't really tell anyone that I was. Until she saw me. Until she saw me actually on the horror trail, to which she radioed in and told everybody that her boyfriend, Sammy, was going through the trail. This led to my demise in that last section. One of the scariest horror trails I've ever been on. All because she made it personal. She didn't mean to. The actors decided to. Thanks, actors. Now, Kolten and I embark on our final journey in this horror show. We head to the campgrounds, the main campgrounds, and we go toward what the rental cabins are. These are their giant cabins that are basically on stilts, with stairs, wooden staircases, and balconies all around this damn thing. So I am a little unnerved. And I look at this and I'm like, all right, that is my nightmare. This is actually terrifying. So we stop outside of an old crazy lady's house, which was one of the rental cabins, and there's just a bunch of decaying dolls hanging from the trees, hanging from the house itself, and just all around the place, strewn about the place. And before we get here, I do see my beautiful girlfriend, Kat, and I am so thrilled to see her at this moment. When I picked her up later this night, she got hell. I was like, why did you make this so bad? Why did you make it personal? Oh my god, it was so scary. Oh my god. And I was just a fucking pussy and went just like, oh my god, why did you do that? That's when I found out she did not do that. That was the actors. So we get to this dollhouse, and they're kind of like looking for people to go first. No one's volunteering. I want to hurry the fuck up, so I go first. And Kolten and I head into the thing, and we're alone again. It's just me and him going first. Um, I tell him he can go on ahead. He can be first. He says, that's okay. And I said, fine, I'll lead this ship. But the next time that we do a horror trail, you lead. We're going to get back to that. We're going to get back to that story, because that plays into this story very well. So we enter this dollhouse, and it is like that one section in Resident Evil Village where there's just dolls everywhere, and it's creepy. It's fucking weird. Weird music's playing. I don't know if that's actually what happened. I don't think there was any music, but in my head, creepy doll music for sure. Unmistakable. So we are looking around and we're like, oh, this is very uncomfortable. And we find this old lady who is rocking in her chair next to the exit, the door we need to go in. And I'm like, okay, let's go in. And so I'm just like, can I go through this door? And she's just like, okay, I'm reaching for the door handle. And so I grab the door handle, and she snatches my hand. She just snatches it. The actors aren't supposed to touch you. So this was like a jump scare where I was like, oh, there I go. I'm dead. That's it. And she quickly changes where she's grabbing, and she grabs the door handle and opens it for me. And she kind of just waves us through. I'm terrified. I'm like, oh, all right. And we go on our merry fucking way. So we get to the next cabin, which is probably the scariest part of the entire experience. So, to give a little bit of a preface to this, we went to a horror trail after the fact on Halloween night here in my hometown. And Kolten and I did that one together too, alone. Kolten, who, was a little shit and made me lead this one, had to lead that one. Well, it's this trail that is werewolf themed, and we go through these really old warehouses, and there's a part in which has to be their main attraction, has to be what they've made this entire thing about. There's a part in which a gigantic 10 feet, easily 15 foot tall and wide werewolf head just emerges out of a tarp and just snarls and tries to bite and right at you. And Kolten, who is leading, gets the full brunt of this as he emerges into a dark room. And the lights come on, and that werewolf comes right at him. He details this as, quote, I thought I was going to die. He thought. He looked at it and he was like, "Oh, that's it. I'm gone. Bye, cruel world." I saw it as a dark room in which my best friend disappeared into, and suddenly I see him just standing like like some cinematic, those artist renditions of like a knight standing up against like this 1,000,000-foot tall eldritch god. It was like that. He just was standing in the lights and as a silhouette as this giant head is looming over him and snarling at him, and he's just perfectly still, just, and I'm like, oh my god. And I'm just like, oh, I witnessed my best friend get eaten. That's just it. That's how tonight goes. That's like the scariest moment he had at the horror trail. So this is the story of my moment at the horror trail I have been talking about. We go in, and I look at the wall, and I realize it says Camp Crystal Lake. And I get excited. I'm like, oh my god. And I look around, and it looks like just regular cabins. And I'm just like, oh my god, they did Camp Crystal Lake from Friday the 13th. I'm like, oh my god, that's so fun. I love Jason Voorhees. And so I turn around, because Kolten's following me, and I'm excited. And I turn around, and I'm about to tell him all about it. And as I turn around, he moves just perfectly out of the way for me to see Michael Myers from Halloween, behind him, behind the door, shutting the door for us as Kolten and I came in. And I freeze and I'm like, oh, I'm like, behind you, behind you. And Kolten's like, what? And then he turns around and he's like, oh. And so I figure, oh, Michael Myers has Kolten. He's terrorizing him. So I'll go look around, try to get out of here. And I see this bench that's in the threshold of the rest of the cabin, this little doorway. And so I try to step over the threshold, the bench, and it's super foggy. I can't see a thing. I can't see what is in front of me, and I'm just like, oh my god, what am I doing? So that's when I see, just running at me, Jason fucking Voorhees with a machete, and he goes right in my face as I'm stepping over the bench, and I'm just like, hi Jason. And he's just, and I go, can I step over the bench? Can I do that? And he goes, and I'm like, I have to go under the bench? And he goes, I'm like, how do I get out? How do I get out? And he just arm stretched past my head, pointing right at a door behind me that I didn't notice because Michael Myers was torturing my best friend. And Michael Myers is standing right next to this door. Kolten had just witnessed everything that happened with me. So I go, thank you. And so I walk toward the door. And as I reach for the door, Michael Myers sets off what I can only call a trap. And lights blare in my face as a loud noise occurs. And I'm just fucking flashbanged as I go out this door. And I'm just like, oh my god. So we emerge at this campfire. And this is where the token chainsaw man comes out. I don't care for him at all. When I was younger, chainsaw men were horrifying and they kept me from going to trails. My mom even was like, "Oh, you went to a horror trail?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I don't care for the chainsaw men anymore. What I did care about was I was freaked out and on edge because everyone before knew my name. So I felt like this entire experience was being personalized and people were out to get me specifically. So this didn't help, but when I got down the stairs and saw this chainsaw man, who I ignored, who also was a chainsaw werewolf. He was a werewolf too, which he doesn't even need the chainsaw really. He has claws and teeth. But you know what? Whatever. Lazy werewolf. So I get down the stairs and I'm just freaked out. I'm just looking everywhere. I'm like, "Oh my god, what's going to happen next?" And I just suddenly feel a thwack right on my leg, and I go, "Ow!" And I look down, and this man with a scythe is slamming the scythe into my leg. They're not supposed to touch you, so I'm just like, "What the fuck?" And he looks and he goes, and fucking disappears underneath the whatever you call it, just underneath the staircase. And I don't see him again. So we venture forth to one of two of the last cabins, and here is just like some butcher's deal. It's just very gory, very fake gore, and I'm just like, "Oh my god, okay." So this area, I'm just like, "Okay, we'll get through it." And it's just gory, 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 blood. A giant butcher guy who is kind of like haunting us. I, Fake gore doesn't really bother me. I couldn't tell if it was real gore, so I assumed it was fake. But then we get into an area in which there are just an endless amount of tarps and fog. And suddenly I can't see. I can't see anything in front of me. Everything is white. Kolten can't see. Nothing we can do here will help us. We are just blindly going into whatever's next. So we get into the middle of this floor as we push through the tarps, and I am at this point actually shaking, like, and I'm on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And we get out into the middle of the room, and suddenly lights shine, and there's blood and gore all around us, fake bodies, whatever. And the loudest train horn you have ever heard blasts in our fucking ears, full volume. And we just cover our ears and we run and we're trying to find the doorknob. And I'm just like, "Oh my god, where is it? Where is it? Where is it?" And finally I find it through the fog, and I'm just like, "Yeah!" And I open the door and rush out of it and make sure Kolten gets out. And I'm just like, "Oh my god." And I'm looking around. I'm like, "Oh, okay. We're fine. We're fine." And then I lock eyes, and there is a woman, and she's waiting at the bottom of this ramp. And there's nowhere I can go. Nowhere else I can go. I can go back, but I have to press forward. And she has a knife in her hand. I am shaking, and I just look at her and I go, "No, no, I'm not coming down there. I can't. I can't do that. I can't do this. I'm done. I'm done. This is over. I'm good." And she's just standing and she goes, "It's okay." And I'm just like, "No, no." And she's like, "Just come here. Let me see your hand." And I'm like, "Oh, God, no. Please, please don't." And she's like, "No, no, it's okay, darling." And I'm just like, "What?" And she's like, "Stand still." And she comes over, grabs my hand, and she cuts off the bracelet. The bracelet that they put on you when you get in here to identify that you paid. She cuts off Kolten's as well, and we find out that this is the end. I'm still not convinced it's the end. I just go forward and I'm just like, oh my god, what's going to happen next? What's going to scare me next? And I lock eyes with a like giant clown couch, which has like the name of the event on there, and it's like a photo op spot. Um, and then there's this woman selling shirts and a guy selling beef jerky with his cat, which isn't even his cat. It's like some cat that roams the playgrounds or campgrounds. So I'm just standing there bewildered, and I'm just like, what's gonna happen? And I guess I stood there long enough that the rest of the group eventually was there, and I found out that, you know, I was scared for nothing because these people didn't know who I was. They didn't hear about uh, me being Kat's boyfriend. So that was the end of the night. Um, Obviously, I congratulated Kat on her makeup and just a place well done. But that was the single scariest experience I have gone through on at least a horror trail for Halloween or something like that. But it nearly sent me into a panic because I was just like, everyone's out to get me. I am done for. They're gonna kill me. When in reality, it was that only small section, while the rest was just really good horror. So, the moral of the story is if you are going through a horror trail, bring Kolten. There's lots of fun going on a horror trail with. He's mostly silent. He's a very quiet guy. He'll make you laugh, and when you shit your pants, he'll be there to shit his pants too. And I think that's all what Halloween is about. Sammy said in January. But yeah, if you like the story, I know it's a new one. It's not something I usually do or think I'll do in the future, but it's just a good one. If you like the story, like, comment, and subscribe. All three help me very much. Even if your comment is like, who the fuck likes tacos? I like tacos. I'd respond. I'd reply. Just saying. Kat Jones was a giant part of this entire experience. I mean, I was only there because of her. Um, so check out her channel. I actually edit her videos myself. I am editor boyfriend. Here's my avatar here. Big shout out dedication to Kolten. Today's his birthday. Happy birthday, dude. You're one of the greatest people I know. Um, he also kind of pushed for me to upload this video because I guess this is a funny story. Yeah, if you want more of Sammy, TVTrifecta podcast is a great place to start. Um, Other than that, I'll see you real soon for the next video. I believe the next one is going to be my third Undertale episode. Already prepped and ready, so won't wait too long for that. But yeah, I'm signing off. See you guys and have a great night.